Family Wealth with Esther. I'm your host, Esther Goche, and I'm excited for this episode. And today we're going to be looking at something really amazing and something really fundamental in the family enterprise space. We're going to be exploring the three-circle model, a framework so insightful and so simply elegant, and a framework that's been used to help families understand the diversity of perspectives that exist in the family business and family enterprise space. And the person who came up with the three-circle model is called Professor John Davis. He's a renowned author, educator, and currently heading the family enterprise at MIT Sloan. And they came up with the three-circle model in the 1980s doing some research at Harvard. And they'd been researching family businesses. And during their research, they found that there are so many unique intersections between family and ownership and business. So this episode is for everybody who's involved with a family business, right? Whether you're working in advisory, whether you're working in a bank, whether you're working in the legal space, whether you're working as an advisor, or whether you are in a family business, this framework is fundamental and quite a pivotal tool to help you, number one, visually frame what family businesses and family enterprises actually look like, and helps us to map the diverse perspectives that exist in the family business world. So let's get straight into it. The first circle we're going to be looking at in the three-circle model is the family. Now, in the family circle, it's everyone in the family, right? It's every family member regardless of their role. So whether you have multiple generations in their fathers, mothers, spouses, your in-laws, whether daughter-in-law, son-in-laws, grandchildren, cousins, aunties, great-grandparents, anybody who is a family member is in the family circle. And the family circle is what do people in the family circle want, right? What are their values? What are they looking at protecting? What are their interests? So people in the family circle are looking at, number one, making sure that they maintain harmonious relationships, right? They're looking at preserving their family name, their legacy, right? They're also looking at resources. How do we keep our family eating, paying school fees, making sure everybody's housed and taken care of, right? So the family is interested in the resources that take care of it. And the family is also interested in its interests. How do family members progress in their lives and their careers? The family is also looking at managing entitlement and managing relationships. So when we're looking at the first circle, when we explore the three-circle model, the first most important circle that we need to understand is the family. Now, the second circle that's important is ownership. When we're exploring ownership, we're saying, who has equity in this business? Who has ownership? And the ownership circle is quite an interesting one because you have multiple models to what this could look like. And this is where it's important to then look at how your family business fits into it or how your clients' businesses fit into it. Because you might have a family business where it was started by a founder with a mother or a father. And they probably may be the sole shareholder, right? Someone might have started a business and made the trust or a company the shareholder to this business, right? A lot of people start family businesses as couples. So the shareholding or the ownership structure of that legal entity are two people, so a couple. There are certain family businesses that might actually not have grown enough to have institutional investors. So you might have sold some of your shares whether to private equity, or you might have other investors that are bought into the business that are not a part of the family. So that ownership circle is quite important to consider because you have a diversity of views. Many people start their family businesses as, with a brother or a sister. So you might have two siblings that put money together and they're the owners of this business. So the ownership circle is looking at anybody who has an equity stake in the business. And as you're modeling your own family business, you're now trying to map what that ownership structure looks like for you. And if you're working in an advisory, it also helps to map each and every client to understand what do their individual ownership structures look like, because that ownership circle can come with a diversity of views. Recently, I was actually talking to a family that it's a family business, and they have quite a big corporate investor, and they're a bit at loggerheads because they've owned the business for a very long time and they sold some shares to a very big corporate entity. And they have values that they instill or have as a family. They've kept their employees for a very long time. They were not keen on retrenchments, but the corporate is trying to look at protecting their investment. So they're looking at retrenchments and so on and so forth. And so you had a bit of conflict in ownership in views of the owners, right? You have these corporate owners that are interested in the equity stake. They're interested in profitability. They're interested in protecting their investment or protecting their equity. And then you've got a family that is also interested in protecting the relationships they've built. They're interested in protecting the employees they have. They're interested in protecting their legacy. So that ownership circle is quite interesting because it comes with a diversity of views. And the main interest you have when you're looking at that ownership circle is, number one, an owner wants to protect their shares. They want to protect their investment. They want to protect the equity that they have in that business. They're also looking at governance and strategic direction of the business. Where is the business going, right? Who is governing it? And how much value are we getting for the investment or the equity we have in that business? So their return on investment or their return on equity. And also they're looking at ensuring that there's long-term growth, right? So that the value of the shares that they have or the equity that they have is actually increasing. So our second circle, when we're exploring the 3-circle model, is our ownership circle. Now, our third circle is the business circle. Now, in this business circle, we're actually exploring those that manage and work in the business, right? And I think you can actually visualize how amazing, because you're looking at 3 different circles that are interconnected, right? You've got the family circle. So I'm going to try and use my hands. The family circle, you've got your ownership circle and the interconnecting. And then you also have the business circle. And now you've got 3 circles interconnecting. Now, in the business circle, you're saying, who is in the business? That's all your management, right? That's your employees, whether they're family or non-family. It's everybody who works in the business, right? It's your management, it's your staff, it's your employees, and in some ways your suppliers. It's everybody who's in your business ecosystem. And what's very interesting is whenever we have conflict in family businesses, it's very easy to map where the root of the conflict is when you actually map the 3 circles for yourself, because you start to understand that there's a diversity of views. You have people that are in the family circle, you have people that are in the ownership circle, then you have people that are in the business circle. Then you might actually have people that are in all 3 circles, or people that are in 1 circle, or people that are in 2 circles, right? So what I love about this model, and like we said earlier, that it's such an elegant model and it's very simple. It then helps us to map all of the diverse perspectives that are there when you're working with family businesses. Now that we've actually understood what the 3-circle model is, right, and we've seen the framework, we've seen the visual representation of what the 3 circles look like. If you've mapped it for yourself, you're going to realize that there's a lot of intersections that are there. And now we want to talk about the 7 stakeholder groups that we have within the 3 circles, and it's important to note them. So number 1, we have the owners, right? And these are people that are solely focused on ownership. They don't go into any other circle. So that might include non-family partners, right? Maybe you started a business with your friend, for example, or you have corporate stakeholders, you have private equity stakeholders, right? These are people that are solely focused on ownership. They do not fall into any other circle. Then the second set of stakeholders we have are your family members. And these are people that are solely in the family. And we know that families are quite complex. Your grandmother might not be a part of the business, right? But she has a huge influence on your dad or your mom, whether it's your grandfather, your grandmother, right? What they say actually matters, right? They could actually wade in with a bit of authority, even though they're not a part of the ownership structure, even though they're not a part of the management structure, but just being family. And we also have even our spouses, right? In-laws. That's a really big topic in the family business space. You have in-laws that are part of the family. They're not a part of the ownership. They're not a part of the business itself. However, they are a part of the family, and their voice, their opinions, and their thoughts matter. So we've got ownership, all right, those only in the owner circle. Then we've got family members, those that are solely in the family circle. However, they are still impacted by the ownership circle or the business circle. And then we have our employees. These are people that solely work in the business. That's all that they do, right? They are the staff in the business. They're people that are driving the business. They're not necessarily family, right? But they're the ones that are actually ensuring that the family has a business that they're working on. So that's our third set of stakeholders, right? Then now we're going on to where we have intersections. You have owners that are family. So, and I mean, you can have multiple scenarios in this. You could have a couple, right? You're married, you started a business, and you both have shares. You can have siblings, right? You are siblings, you own the business, but you're also family. All right, so you've got a stakeholder group that are both owners and their family. And then we're also looking at owners and their employees. There are a lot of businesses that actually give their management equity or a stake in the business, but they're not necessarily family. So they work in the business, they have ownership, right? Or maybe you've got a partner who has an equity stake in the business, but they also work, they're part of the management. So you have owners and employees. So these people exist in the ownership circle and in the employee circle. They're not necessarily family, right? But they're important because they own part of the business and they have agency in that they actually work in the business. And then you have family employees, right? You have people that are part of the family and they work in the business. So they might not necessarily even be owners. You own a business, maybe you hired your niece, your nephew, your spouse, your cousin, your sister, so on and so forth, right? These are people that are part of your family and they're part of the staff in the business. So they come in with two different perspectives. They come in with the perspective of the family and they come in with the perspective of being an employee that is in the business. So you can see where sometimes family businesses become complex and complicated. It's because you've got a diversity of stakeholders in the actual business. So you've got family employees, and then our last set of stakeholders is someone who is in all three of the circles. So that is an owner who is family, who works in the business. So that person has a diversity of interests, right? They are interested in the return on investment that they have as an owner in the business. They are part of the family and they actually are an employee of the business. So they're ensuring that the business is running, they have benefits, they are remunerated from the business itself. And why the three circle, I think, has survived over the past 40 years is because it clearly simplifies all the perspectives that exist in the family enterprise space. It really helps us to map who all the stakeholders are. And when you've mapped them, you can actually get to the root of the cause of your conflict. You can understand where people can come to loggerheads. It's because people are standing in different circles. And why I actually love the three circles and why I wanted to do this particular episode was because the three circle model was my aha moment for family businesses. It really spoke to me and it helped me to crystallize and bring clarity to some of the challenges I was seeing in our family business, right? As a second gen in a family business, I could actually see where sources of conflict were coming from. When I mapped everybody and I said, oh, okay, I can actually see where the challenges are, where resistance comes, where you have a diversity of opinion. It's because you're clearly able to see all the different interests mapped on on the circles. So the 3 circles help us to understand how to prioritize people and how to also understand the diversity of perspectives. Now, think about, I think one of the most common conflicts I've seen whenever people engage us, especially from an advisory perspective, is where you have someone who is a family and an employee. I think that's probably where a lot of conflict usually comes, right? You got family members that don't work in the business, and then you got family members that do work in the business. And there's conflict because those who work in the business also have benefits that come from the business because they're being paid, right? They're using their time, their resources, their skills, their talent to grow the business. And those in the family, maybe they're only getting resources that come from the business, or maybe they're getting dividends if they're part of the ownership structure. And usually conflict arises when there's a sense of unfairness, to feel that why are those in the business getting this? And another common source of conflict is non-family employees. In the family business space, it's something that's often overlooked, right? A lot of people struggle to work in family businesses because they feel that they might struggle with upward mobility because those places are taken by family members that might not be as qualified as they are. And it's very common, right? When you have different generations moving into the family businesses and you've had employees that are there for a long time, they might resist because they feel that maybe that place belongs to them. And they might feel that it is unfair, that because someone is family, because someone is carrying someone's name, they are entitled or they've been given an easier pass. So there's so many different examples that are so relatable to all of us, right? On the diversity of perspectives and examples that actually help us understand the root of conflict, right? So usually it's fairness, it's remuneration, it's what comes first. Is it the family or the business? That's always a big thing. Sometimes families can prioritize themselves above the business. So those in the business system might feel that the family is being unfair because maybe they're taking dividends and going on holiday, right? Where maybe the managers in the business feel like we should have taken our dividends and invested in the growth of the company. So when you're mapping it, you're not just mapping it from the perspective of the family, you're mapping it from the perspective of the entire system, which is the family, the ownership structure, and the business. So now that we've understood all the entire sort of framework, right? What are the key benefits of understanding the 3 circle model? One of the things that we're big on this podcast is ensuring that you guys actually and our listeners have actionable insights, actionable things that they can actually do. And this is why we're taking time to do the 3 circle model, because we'd love for you to actually sit and do it for yourself. So if you're part of a family business ecosystem, whether you're working in advisory or in finance, mapping some of these things really helps you navigate and might bring clarity to certain places that have conflict, and might actually end up giving you solutions to say, how do we fix this? Because you can see the diversity of perspectives and where the source of conflict is actually coming from. So what are the key benefits, right, that we have from the 3 circle model? I think number one for me, it's improved communication. Once you understand where everybody's standing, right, it's easier for you to be able to communicate. I kind of feel like the 3 circle model is like someone who's on a mountain, or 3 people on a mountain. When you're on a mountain, you're going uphill, and when you're going up, it has multiple perspectives. Someone at the bottom or the base of the mountain, someone who's halfway up the mountain, and someone's at the top of the mountain. They're on the same mountain, but they've got different views, right? Someone at the bottom is seeing things differently. Someone in the middle is seeing things differently. And someone at the top is seeing things differently. But they're all on the same mountain. And if they were to sit there and have an argument about what they're seeing, that would be wrong. However, if they sit there and say, well, we're on the same mountain, all that it is that we have a diversity or difference of perspective, right? So when we all acknowledge differences in perspective and where we're standing and what we want from the business, because we're all in different aspects of it, right? We can actually improve how we communicate. We can actually see the root of our conflict, and we can actually then come up with solutions. So the second thing is that it's such a powerful way to help you resolve conflict or manage it, because sometimes I believe that conflict can never be completely resolved. We're human beings. But it's important to say that, look, we have mechanisms to manage the conflict because we've understood sources of conflict, right? So if you can't get to conflict resolution, you can at least get to conflict management, right? To say, this conflict is not toxic, it's not destroying the family, and it's not destroying the business, but we've understood where everybody stands. And because we know where everybody stands, we are now mapping a way forward that could sort of help everybody to meet halfway. And I think the other thing about the three circle model is that it helps us to become or build professional family businesses. When you've mapped how important your non-family is, when you've mapped how important your owners are, when you've mapped how important you are as a family, it then helps you to create a roadmap to running yourselves professionally, because you understand that in as much as we own this business and we are family, we also have some very important people that may not be a part of our family. However, they might feel disgruntled or unhappy or overlooked, and we actually need them to drive the business, right? So whether that's in your ownership structure or whether that's in your business or management structure. And so it helps families on the roadmap to professionalization, which is a really big topic and a really big thing to explore with family businesses. And the last thing is that it also helps with succession planning. Although I hate the term succession planning, I believe in continuity, because what you want is for things to continue, for things to keep going, right? I feel that succession planning sometimes can be a bit final. It can be a bit handing over to a specific person. Whereas when you're looking at business continuity or family continuity, you're saying after this generation has passed, how does this family continue, right? The leadership structures within the family itself. And how does this business continue? Or how does this wealth continue? You might choose to sell the business, you might choose to continue the business, but still what you have is continuity within the family. So the key benefits of us actually exploring this is number one, we can actually improve our communication. It can help us to resolve or manage our conflict. It can help us with our continuity plans or succession planning. And lastly, it can actually help us to become or build professional family businesses. So, in conclusion, our key takeaways from exploring the three circles, right, is number one, sit down and do it for yourselves. It's very important that if you're intentional about building a multi-generational business, you have to start planning. There are so many examples of big global brands that started very small and grew into something very big. But I think what marks how they manage to transition is planning and being intentional and having access to information, right? Is what empowers us. So map the three circles. They're very simple, and then begin to map them in your world. And as you do it, you're probably going to come up with a lot of examples and reasons to see where sources of conflict exist within your family or in your business, and whether you're using them from an advisory perspective. You can actually start to see how you can manage people, because you can see that mountain that we're talking about and the different perspectives that exist at each level of the mountain, right? The view that everybody has, whether you're at the base, whether you're in the middle, whether you're at the top. You're on the same mountain, but you're seeing things differently. You're not seeing at the same level. And this is the beauty and the simplicity and the elegance of the three circle model. It just really helps to create a visual representation of where everybody stands. So our first thing is, please map them. Send us a DM, send us a message, tell us what your experience was, tell us what you thought, tell us what you learned when you mapped it for yourselves. We're getting great feedback on our old one of our first episodes, the 5 capitals, right? We want you to be able to implement the things that we are discussing in the podcast, because that's the point. It's to empower us to build sustainable multi-generational families, and not just the family, but the business itself. So number one, please ensure that as you're going through the podcast, sit there and map it for yourself. Sit down and think about it. Sit down and unpack it, what it looks like in your family, and what you've learned, and how you can maybe get to the root of where conflict exists. All right. And Professor John Davis has written so many articles, has so many amazing frameworks. So for further reading, and if you want to explore more about, different things that he's written, and go to johndavis.com, right? And you'll be able to see the history of the 3-circle model. You'll be able to read a lot of articles about its evolution, and you'll be able to also see how it's been implemented in different family business setups and different family enterprise setups, and in the family office space as well. So it's not just looking at family businesses, but it's looking at the whole entire family wealth space, right? So whether at a business level, whether at a family office level, there's so many great resources on Professor John Davis's website, his personal website, and a lot of his research and a lot of amazing articles that if you're intentional, if you're serious about saying, we want to build something sustainable, we want to build something long term, we want to build something that we believe can transcend just us, then please, go have a look, read, and yes, please do the homework, right? Because at the end of the day, it's one thing to listen to a podcast, but what matters is the wisdom or the knowledge that we implement. It's one thing to know something, but it's another thing to implement that thing. So until then, we hope that you keep it in the family and in the business.